So, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Once again, welcome to Electrical Engineering Career Development Workshop. This was sort of brainchild of me and Joshua for, I would say, for a few months now. And in the past, I've conducted these type of workshops by myself. Joshua has been doing the mentorship and career counseling and coaching for some time as well. And since we sort of cross paths, we're like, okay, let's do a collaborative event. We have our own sets of audiences, and both can benefit from this type of a discussion. So, the game plan, the agenda for today's session is that for the first 30 minutes or so, I am going to walk you guys through the PE licensing journey. What are the key milestones along the way? What are the check boxes that you have to tick? The examination requirements, a little bit of a high level overview of the experience requirements, and then we're going to transition into life after PE. And that's basically going to be Joshua's forte. A brief introduction of myself. A lot of students over here already, or attendees already familiar. Some, I know half of you guys I can more or less recognize by name. You are either my current, former students. Um, I help engineers prepare for FE electrical and PE power exam prep. I have developed multiple resources for FE electrical and PE power exam prep. I myself am a practice. I'm still a licensed engineer, but I don't practice engineering per se. I have over 10, 12 years of experience in consulting, MEP environment, and then I've worked on the client side as well. Started out as a journalist and then transitioned into lead electrical engineering roles, owners, engineers roles, and so on. Joshua?
Welcome, everybody. I'm Joshua Timm, the founder and the principal of Power Transformations, where we train and mentor the P&C leaders of tomorrow. If you're not familiar with what I mean by P&C, I'm talking about protection and control engineering field, a niche specialty within power systems. I know we have a broad range of audiences today. Some of you are P&C experts and some are not. The things I have to share for you for life after the PE will be relevant to all of you, whether you're a P&C engineer or not. So look forward to sharing with you more in the second half of today's session on how to continue your growth past your PE license. But over the past 5 years, I've had thousands of students now from 80 countries around the world that are all dedicated to growing and developing their expertise in the protection and control engineering field. So look forward to sharing with you. Take it away, Wasim.
All right, great. Thanks a lot for that, Joshua. So let us start with the very first step now as to what really is involved if you want to become a licensed PE in the US. You have to have EAC ABET accredited engineering degree. Now, this is what ideally you should have. As you guys probably know, I would say, at least based on my observation, the student base that I have in my FE program and the PE Power program, about 1/3 of the engineers that are part of my program or have gone through my program, or maybe even more than 1/3, I would venture to say maybe even up to 50% of the engineers are internationally trained. Even within the US, not every single school is EAC ABET accredited. And you can only imagine the number of universities internationally that have this accreditation. So the point I'm trying to make over here is that if your university, if your degree is not ABET EAC accredited, that is not the end of the world. The amazing thing about pretty much all the professions in the US is that there are pathways. Okay, there are options, there are routes that allow for internationally trained professionals, whether you're a doctor, lawyer, accountant, or engineer in our case, for you to pursue and get your licensure in order to make the playing field even. So internationally trained engineers or folks who don't have EAC ABET accredited degrees, what you need to do is credential evaluation, get that done from NCEES. And Joshua is gonna basically go over the NCEES website a little bit more from the CEU PDH point of view, but it's that same organization, same institution that conducts these exams, and they will be validating your degrees. even if there are certain deficiencies that they find, it's not a big deal because at that point as well, they are going to give you options to take CLAP courses or other venues with which you can fill in those gaps. Okay. So your degree, if you have an EAC ABET accredited, good. If you don't, it's not a big deal. You can get the credential evaluation done, fill in the gaps, and still continue. Now, an interesting thing which a lot of engineers don't know is that for majority of the states, you actually don't need any type of pre-approval in order to take the FE exam. So let's say you're not 100% sure about whether your degree is ABET accredited or you're internationally trained engineer trying to find your footing in the US, enter the job market. One of the best things that you can do is to prepare for the FE exam right away. Okay, because majority of the state, with a handful of exceptions, don't require you to get even the credential evaluation done prior to taking the FE exam, okay, or any type of documentation. So you can basically get started with your FE exam preparation and clear this exam. The best part about passing the FE exam is that it gives you a credential that is local in the US, okay, and it allows you to then on your LinkedIn profile say that you have FE exam passed. NCS is going to basically issue you a certificate of sort that basically confirms that you've passed the exam. And you can take that to the next level by getting the EIT certification. EIT certification is actually backed up by state. It is not basically a license, but it is fairly close to it. Doesn't give you any privileges that the license has, but it gets you registered as an engineer intern in training with the state that you basically applied for. At that point in time, they may want you to do credential evaluation. Some folks get scared by the word credential evaluation as if somebody's going to find out that I'm not an engineer. As I told you, that is not difficult. It's fairly simple, straightforward. I recommend folks to actually start that process sooner rather than later because even if your degrees are from the other corner of the world, NCS, they basically cater to engineers all around the world. They've probably come across credential evaluation applications from other engineers from the same school that you went to. But get that process started sooner rather than later, but it does not have to be a roadblock for you to take the FE exam. It is going to allow you to basically, it smoothens the path and combined with the FE exam, passing the FE exam, getting the credential evaluation done, EIT certification, these are low hanging fruits, guys. And even if you don't have the 4 years of experience that you need under a PE, it's a chicken and egg issue, right? People are like, oh, I need to get the P license. I need to get 4 years of experience, but nobody's going to hire me because I'm internationally trained or I don't have that experience. And that applies to new grads in the US as well. If you're graduating from a US school and you're like, I don't have 4 years of experience, PE, I'll get the PE when I have the experience. There's a lot of legwork that you can do leading up to it, making you more employable as a new graduate. Or if you're transitioning into engineering, it will make you a lot more employable as well. Okay. So if you're pivoting from a different career to engineering, or even from management to engineering, or project engineering to technical engineering, these are the low hanging fruits, which I think that you can easily achieve, regardless of whatever the status, the starting point is. Now, I'm going to speak a little bit about this 4 year experience thing. There are two things. One is PE exam, okay, and the other is the actual licensure. As far as taking the PE exam is concerned, not all the 50 states and the District of Columbia, they are not all on the same page yet. What I mean by that is that there are states that will allow you to take your PE exam right after passing your FE exam. Okay, which means that they don't care about your 4 year experience requirement to be met. They are called the decoupled state. There are about 20 of those states right now, and the number is increasing every year. Texas, I believe, was the very first one. Now California, Florida, Michigan, Wisconsin, New Jersey, a bunch of states are like pass your FE exam, take your P exam, get both of these exams done, and then submit your application for licensure. What this allows is, and this is what a lot of my FE students do, they basically get done with the FE exam, they carry the momentum forward into the P exam, they get the P exam done, their profile gets lifted, right? Because you've knocked out some of the most difficult aspects of the licensure requirement, and then they can flaunt that in the interviews to their employers, like, we've completed these exams. So uh, when you hire us, we just need 4 years of experience, and then you basically have a PE in your team, right? Now, the licensure requirements, the 4 year is actually pretty much common across all the states. What this means is that in addition to meeting the experience requirement, and the exam requirements, the references, the background check, and whatnot, none of the states is going to give you a license until and unless you have 4 years of verifiable and progressively, valuable experience that they recognize meeting certain criteria. Okay. So these are two different things. My advice is that even if you're a new graduate, even if you're an internationally trained engineer, you don't have 4 years under your belt, you're trying to get a foot in the door, try and get these exams done ASAP. And the other aspect before I move on is that you don't have to register for the state that you are in. Let's say you find yourself in New York. I know New York is not a decoupled state, right? And you've passed your FE exam and you're thinking, okay, now I have to wait 4 years just because I'm living in New York. That's not true. You can actually register for New Jersey, still take the exam in New York at a testing center. I mean, they're next door, so it really doesn't matter. You can just go across. But the point is that the state you registered the exam for is irrelevant. So if you want to get these exams done and they are recognized all across the US, they're centrally conducted by NCS, sort of a workaround that allows you to complete these exams sooner rather than later. Okay, I'm going to move on. Thanks a lot for taking the questions in the meantime, Joshua. Appreciate that. So EIT certification, as I sort of elaborated previously as well, this is essentially the recognition at a state level after you pass the FE exam. A lot of states would like your credential evaluation to be taken care of at this point. Some of the states may not. They'd be like, okay, you pass the FE exam, here's a EIT certification. But most of the states are going to be like, okay, tell us about your undergraduate, get your degree evaluated, right? Register in the register your profile with us, and so on and so forth. And you can actually you get assigned a number, you get a certificate, proper certificate. You can bring those to your interviews, whether it's your first job or you're transitioning from one job to another job or looking for better opportunities. It's backed up by the state. The point I'd like to make over here, myself have done graduate studies, and based on my personal experience and that of a lot of my students, engineers who are now PEs, the step up that you get in terms of recognition, in terms of reward, in terms of opportunities. Let's say we compare a graduate degree, master's of engineering in energy systems, power systems, electrical engineering, whatever your specialty is, compared to even getting just an EIT certification, not even comparing it to a PE license, full-blown PE license. These are step differences. They're not even in the same, league, because employers, and when you look at the opportunities, job opportunities, openings, and Joshua is going to share some of them, they explicitly ask for EIT certification or the FE exam or the PE power exam, right? The reason is that this is backed up by the state, not a single institution, like not your University of XYZ is going to issue a diploma or degree, right? But a state is going to issue you a EIT certification. A state is going to issue you a PE license that comes with a lot of privileges. Okay. So the P license gives you legal authority to sign designs, increase pay, leadership, eligibility, and so on. We'll talk about that later on. In terms of the career impacts, promotions, a lot of companies, employers have these certifications and the P licensure tied to certain roles. I know for a fact a lot of senior engineers, 15, 20, even 25 years of experience, they join my program, go through the FE electrical and computer exam preparation, PE power exam preparation, and they are sort of in the later half, if not in the twilight of their career, right? The reason that they basically go back to the drawing board and study a lot of these topics from scratch is that the value proposition is still so high, because their company, their employer tells them that for you to become a principal engineer, right? A principal engineer, you have to have your PE license. I mean, you have 20 years of experience, you have very marketable skill sets, you are a high performer, A star, everything is fine. But we have to meet this requirement for you to be promoted to a for you to be promoted to a principal. So that's something that is non-negotiable for a lot of employers. And when you're switching, and even if you are, let's say, running your own business, I know some of my former students have basically set up their own consulting firms and whatnot. Nobody's gonna take you seriously until and unless you have a PE, new clients, and they or if you have a PE on your team. Now, getting a PE on your team, if you're not a PE yourself, I mean that's pretty expensive, right? And PEs in the US, electrical PEs are in high demand, so much so that I routinely have mechanical engineers enrolling in my PE power program because they want to open up opportunities for themselves in the power systems. Now, I'm going to do a very quick overview of what's the difference between PE power, FE electrical. I see some of the questions have already come up on this. If you guys are not familiar, FE electrical is the first exam that you have to pass, and the threshold to take this exam is very low. Pretty much every state allows you to register for this exam without any prior pre-approval or documentation. And my recommendation is that if you are thinking of pursuing P license, this is a no-brainer. You should dive into it sooner rather than later. If you go to the NCS website, you're going to see that they explicitly say that the FE electrical and computer exam and the FE exam in general is catered more towards the new graduates and folks who have recently graduated. It does not mean that if you've been out of school for a long time, you don't have to worry about it. Getting an exemption for FE electrical and computer exam and diving right into PE power exam is extremely difficult. I actually did an entire webinar on this topic. I have done multiple LinkedIn posts as well as on my YouTube channel, a couple of videos that folks who try to get exemption for FE exam and jump directly to P power exam, they're limiting their mobility in the future because not every state is going to recognize that. Okay, if you move from Texas to, let's say, Illinois, Illinois would be like, go back to the FE exam. We don't recognize you as a PE, even though you got exempted as a PE from Texas for FE electrical. So this is more catered towards your entire undergraduate engineering coursework. Now I have folks over here, attendees over here who have gone through both of my programs. And it's kind of in terms of level of difficulty, it's kind of subjective. Some people find FE electrical more difficult to prepare for. Some people find P power more difficult to prepare for. FE electrical is challenging because it covers entire undergraduate engineering coursework. You only get 3 minutes per question. The total runtime of the exam is 5 hours and 20 minutes, 110 questions. So it's a race against time. Preparing for this exam, A to Z, from mathematics all the way to software, which I cover extremely in depth in my programs, requires commitment of anywhere between 3 to 6 months. Some people get it done under 3 months. Some people take up to a year to prepare, depending on your starting point, depending on what else is going on in your life, and so on. But it is really a test of your undergraduate coursework. P Power exam, folks who find the P Power exam a little bit easier as compared to FE exam tend to be technical engineers who have a lot of exposure to codes and standards, protection and control stuff, who do a lot of calculations, analytical work, run system studies, and they're immersed. Their day-to-day job involves technical engineering. They pick up a lot of things on the field and they are able to sort of connect the dots very quickly because of the extreme focus of P Power exam on power systems engineering. But if my personal opinion is that the P Power exam is slightly more difficult than FE electrical exam, even if you're coming in with all of these advantages. The reason is that they sort of go out of their way to test you at a much more higher level with a higher degree of difficulty. So convoluted type of questions on the P power exam are more of a norm as compared to convoluted or the abstract or the curveball questions on FE, which are more of an exception. You're not in a race against time. They give you plenty of time to think about things. The run time of the exam is much longer than FE. The number of questions are less than FE. But despite all of that, you can see that the passing rate is lower on the P power as compared to the FE electrical. Okay. So my general recommendation, if you're thinking of pursuing the PE licensure, get into the FE, get it done as soon as possible. It only becomes more and more difficult every passing year, not because the exam becomes more difficult. That is kind of a subjective thing. But the more removed you are from your undergraduate engineering coursework, right, the more number of years you let pass by, right, the more difficult it would be for you to sort of do calculus integration, the more difficult it would be for you to do KCL, KVL, and so on. All right. And then take the P power right after passing the FE. Okay, I have 10 more minutes, and I'm going to quickly touch upon some of the changes that are coming to the P power. And this is mostly for folks who are in that pipeline of taking the FE electrical and computer exam, and they've been hearing about some modifications happening to the P power exam, or those who are planning to start the P power exam preparation. October 1st, 2025 is the day when they are going to make some modifications. I have done multiple YouTube videos, multiple LinkedIn posts, answered dozens of questions that I've received from students, but I still find that up until the day October 1st, I'll just keep on reminding and refreshing and, addressing this question. I'll just take a couple of minutes. The modification that is coming about on 1st of October to the P power exam is not as significant as the previous modification that happened on December 1st, 2020. That was a seismic change when the exam basically went from an open book exam where you could bring in all the reference material and literally people used to bring in cartons, right? I myself brought in a whole luggage suitcase filled with books and whatnot. The exam was not easy back then either. So now they are taking away some of the topics that have been in the exam specification and adding a couple of topics. I would say 95% of the exam is still the same in terms of the scope and coverage. The reference handbook that has been released that will take effect 1st of October 2025 is 95% still the same. The significant changes that they've gone from 2017 NEC to 2020 NEC. I personally think they should have gone to 2023 NEC, which is even more recent. And those of you who work with codes and standards, you know that when you go from one edition to another edition, the percentage change between 2020 and 2023 or 2017 and 2020 is less than 1% in terms of the number of pages, number of code sections that get impacted. Okay, it's not a quantum leap. It's always very minuscule, incremental. Sometimes there are minor typos or vaguenesses in the code. So nothing really significantly changes over here. The reference handbook has not changed. There were some omissions in the reference handbook, previous reference handbook, such as there was no mention for CTs, there was no mention for protection, there was no mention for surge protection, and it's still the same case. Okay. A minor couple of corrections over here in terms of voltage regulation formula. They've taken away engineering economics reliability, which I'll discuss shortly, and added a couple of new items. So what has been removed? NGCon, which was sort of being carried over from FE electrical into P power, no longer exists. Okay. Reliability engineering no longer exists. So the focus is more on power systems rather than some of the general topics. So this is easy. In my P Power program right now, because I know a lot of students are still taking the exam up until 30th of September 2025, I've gone through these transitions multiple times. What I'm doing is very strategically identifying topics that have been removed and adding the topics clearly that have been added. In terms of the topics that have been added, this is also fairly minor. Under ladder logic, they've included one pager, literally from FE Electrical and Computer Reference Handbook, that contains AND gate, OR gate, NOR gate, a little bit of details about Boolean logic, De Morgan's law. Now, this is in the context of ladder logic PLC. Those of you who have background in control systems, you exactly know what I'm talking about. And in my P Power program, I actually not only stop at Boolean logic, I actually go through motor schematics, MV motor schematics, LV motor schematics, permissives, interlocks, and everything. So it's already at level 3. So this is already accounted for. In terms of electrical energy storage, we already discussed the batteries in a lot of depth. The ultra capacitors are a new topic for which the new content has been created. And in terms of alternative power generation, PV systems, NEC using as a reference, I go in a lot of detail already in my program, and wind is the new topic. So essentially, these changes are in step with the industrial trend towards renewable. Some of the highest paying jobs at the moment in electrical engineering exist directly or indirectly in the renewable space. It is by far the fastest growing segment of electrical engineering. And I have seen mechanical engineers basically pivot to renewable just because of the amount of opportunities that exist. And these are welcome changes because this brings the exam specification, the P Power exam spec, more and more in line with the reference handbook, with the new industrial changes. Okay. All right, as far as what I can help you guys with in terms of your FE electrical and computer exam preparation, I have multiple resources. I have the on-demand course. I offer it as a monthly subscription as well as a 3-month on-demand course access, self-study, self-paced, 250 plus lectures. Every single topic is explained in depth. I do in-lecture practice problems. I have quizzes with detailed solutions, computer simulated practice exams, mini exams. I personally onboard every single student in my program. I have a community, exclusive community, which is moderated by 2 teaching assistants. Any question you have about anything that I have in my program, whether in my study guide, whether in my live training, whether in my on-demand course, lectures, quizzes, you can take a screenshot, ask a question, and in about 4 to 6 hours, you'll get a response. A lot of you, those of you who have been thinking about FE Electrical, if you do a search on Amazon, my study guide for FE Electrical is the highest rated book on Amazon. I have also published practice exams on Amazon and also computer simulated practice exams. I also have live training program. The live training program I conduct 3 times a year: the winter session, the summer session, and the fall session. The fall session and the winter session are the most popular ones. The live training for the fall session is starting on 13th of September. If you are thinking of getting the FE electrical and computer exam done, and same is true for the PE power exam done, by the end of the year, I would strongly recommend you to consider this. And don't wait until 13th of September. Don't wait until the very last minute to enroll. If you're serious about preparing for your exam, get started sooner rather than later. We still have about a month to go, for 3.5 weeks to go, and I'll personally onboard you. And leading up to the live training, you can go through the on-demand content and warm up and build momentum. So this same formula I use for my PE Power program. I have the on-demand portion of the program. The study guide for PE Power, guys, is the highest rated book in its category. When you just count the number of books and resources that show up on Amazon, when you look at the search results, pretty much anybody and everybody has published something, right? And this book has been the only 5-star rated book in in that category for practically since it got published. Same is true for my FE Electrical. um, and the formula is the same. On-demand course, the live training. So the live training I conduct over 12-week period, just like FE Electrical. Live training for P Power starts on September 9th. And again, if you're serious about taking this exam by the end of the year, I would strongly recommend you to consider these programs. If you want to self-study and if you don't have extra time to do the live training, which I believe that even if you're not able to attend the sessions, about 30% of my students are not able to attend the sessions live because of being in different time zones or life happening and whatnot. And I know a few of you over here, so I'll give you a shout out, Pinky. I saw your name. You asked a question. Um, a lot of these guys and girls basically just go through the recordings, which I upload the very same day, and they can attest to the fact the depth of the coverage of the content. Routinely, students basically tell me on LinkedIn, on comments on Reddit, and during the YouTube success story interviews, that the program not only prepares them for just passing the FE Electrical and Computer exam. For FE Electrical, my students tell me they learn more from my FE Electrical program than they did in their undergraduate engineering coursework. For my PE Power program, I have folks who basically gone through it. They also have grad degrees. They learn more from my PE Power program than they learned in their entire graduate degrees coursework. So my approach is first principle based learning, taking one step at a time and going in depth. Okay, adopting a learning mindset is what has helped me throughout my career, and that's what basically I prime my students to basically strive for. Passing the exam just becomes a byproduct. It just becomes a secondary, outcome. But learning and having that thirst for learning and totally understanding concepts inside out is the true value proposition. As far as the testimonials are concerned, you guys can look up LinkedIn, Reddit, Amazon, YouTube, tons and tons of success stories on my YouTube channels as well. Folks from all different starting points, academic backgrounds, age groups have gone through the program and passed the exams in the first attempt. And for more details, please visit my website, studyforfe.com. That's basically in the footer of this presentation. And feel free to reach out to me in case of any questions. But if you're serious about FE Electrical and P Power, so if you're starting FE Electrical, strongly recommend to consider the live training program, the 6-month bundle for P Power as well, if you want to get it done by the end of the year. Okay. So this is basically my homepage, your one-stop shop for FE Electrical and P Power. Anything can be accomplished on your own. I understand that we live in a day and age where there's an information overflow. But if you want a structured resource, if you value your time and you want to get it done in a streamlined, effective manner, then please consider the program. All right, I'll now let Joshua take over from here. I'm gonna stop sharing my presentation, and Joshua, you can come online.
All right. Can you see me, hear me all right?
Yep, I can see you.
All right.
Are you
Good
sharing
deal. Well,
something?
thanks again, Wasim, for the opportunity to partner up on this career development workshop. Both of our businesses, Power Transformations and StudyforFE, have a mission to help train and mentor junior level engineers, especially strong emphasis on that 0 to 5 years experience range amongst our students. So a lot of common overlap of students that are Wasim's and mine. I've heard a lot of good positive feedback from my students that have benefited from Wasim's programs and vice versa. I'm always referring each other to one another. So great to partner up here. But today, the second half where I want to take over is to help you understand that your journey doesn't stop, though, once you obtain your PE license. In fact, that's just the beginning of your journey. Much like graduating from college with a degree is just the start. So I want to share with you some additional encouragements and strategies for ways that you can continue your own professional development well beyond that first 4 years of experience before the PE license milestone. Perhaps some of these tips that I'm sharing with you are also beneficial in parallel with your PE license preparation journey. That 0 to 4 years, you're also entering industry and needing real life practical applied skills and needing to understand principles and concepts that you're trying to apply on the job to real life projects. And so I want to encourage you this afternoon with some tips on obtaining those real life skills, not just the skills to pass a test or an exam, as is the case with these FEPE, right? But the skills you need to fill the gaps to do your job. But perhaps you stepped out of academia with a bachelor's, master's, PhD degree. It doesn't matter what level. You enter industry and you realize, wait a minute, there's still all these gaps that I don't know what to do. There's still a steep learning curve ahead of me. And so I'm going to help you to understand ways you can fill those gaps, especially if you're a PNC engineer. But if you're not, take the things I'm saying, the ideas, and apply it to your own niche, whatever that might be, and find a relevant training program that fills those gaps for you. I have fond memories of my own PE license journey. I'm going to kind of build on where Wasim left us off here. I took the FE exam my senior year of college at Clemson University, passed it, got my EIT in South Carolina at the next year after graduation. I definitely reinforce what he said, encourage you to take that FE your senior year of college or right after graduation when you're still in that test-taking mindset of academia. And then I took my PE Power exam. I had to wait the 4 years. Today, many states allow you to take it right away after the FE. As soon as you can take it, start studying and preparing for it. But my journey, I studied for about 8 hours a week for 3 months, 2 hours a night. I think it was maybe Tuesday, Thursday evenings. And I studied together with a friend, a colleague of mine, for 4 hours Saturday mornings for those 3 months. And all of that is great accountability to find a cohort to go through your training together with. So I got my first PE license in North Carolina, 2013, my home state at the time. I definitely recommend you generally start with your home state unless there's some exceptions to that. But from there, you can begin to obtain licenses in additional states. We call that comity licensure. And I saw in the chat some people were talking about the NCEES record. That's a helpful tool to help you get licensed in additional states after your first, typically your home state. If you're a consulting engineer like me and you have clients and project locations across multiple locations in the US or Canada, you need to be licensed to practice in each state where you have a project location or a client that you're working with. And so encourage you to, if that's your situation and you're going to be getting multi-state licensure, utilize the NCEES record tool. I'm going to do a screen share in a little while and show you some of the inside of that NCEES tool. But PE licensure, I hope you can tell from my own story, it's a journey. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's not just pass a test and voila. It's for me, it's been over 20 years in my experience. And I can testify to you, listen carefully, from my own experience, that my PE license has opened lots of doors of opportunity. And in my own career path, it's brought me promotion opportunities, compensation increases that came with each one of those steps up in the career ladder. And I was able to step into official supervisory role where I was a PE supervising EITs only a year or two after I obtained my first PE license. To serve as a project manager and or a technical lead on a project, you oftentimes have to have a PE license to be able to be the ceiling engineer, to review, quality assurance check the work, take ownership of it as if it was your own. And then I was later promoted into a group manager role where I was supervising other PEs who were supervising EITs. Again, PE unlocked the door for that opportunity. And then a branch manager role the year after, where I was the PE in responsible charge of the local branch office. That is actually a state government requirement here in the state of South Carolina. And then most recently in 2020, I started my own independent engineering consulting and training business, Power Transformations. Again, I could never have taken that leap if I was not a licensed PE. So I hope you can see from my own journey, this is a critically important milestone to pursue, to open those doors for leadership opportunities and career professional growth opportunities. But don't just take my word for it. I'm going to do a little screen share here. Hopefully you can see my screen. I spent a lot of time on LinkedIn, and if you're not following me and Wasim on LinkedIn, please do. You'll see a lot of cool P&C and FEPE tips out there from us. But as I'm on there, I see in my feed just this past week some opportunities popping up. Substation protection and controls engineer. Notice I highlighted PE is required. It's a requirement, a mandatory to get your foot in the door for such an opportunity. It's not enough to have 4+ years of experience. You have to have passed the exam and obtained your license. And likewise, another one that popped up in my feed just this past week from a utility in Florida. If you're trying to come in entry level, they highly encourage or require you to have an FE EIT already in hand or working into that process. And then if you want to qualify later down the road for a senior engineer, again, years of experience is not sufficient. You need to also have obtained your PE license in that particular state where the job is located. So just giving you those as a couple examples that popped up on my feed just this past week. I also offer one-on-one career coaching calls with my students where I help walk them through their career paths and review their goals and their 5-year vision and recommended action steps to help them work towards those dreams. And one of my students recently shared with me in a coaching call, they said, Joshua, he has his EIT. He's studying to pass the PE and get his license in the near future. Definitely, he's been using Wasim's program for that. But he has a particular job opportunity he's interested in. But the hiring manager told him point blank, give me a call once you get your PE license. So again, it opens doors for you. So even if your current job or employer doesn't require a PE license, even if your current industry doesn't generally require PE licensure, I recommend you go for it to future-proof your career path. It's worth the investment. You don't know what the future holds for your industry, for your company. Hopefully you're in a stable situation, but you don't want to have doors that are closed down the road. You want to have, it takes months to get licensed. You don't want to have to try to scramble urgently to open those doors when you need it down the road. Spend that investment of time and energy today. It'll bear dividends in the future, just like any investment. that you choose to make in your own professional development goals, PE or otherwise. You go to an investment advisor to talk about stocks and other financial investment opportunities. What do they always tell you? A disclaimer, a warning, past performance is no guarantee of future return. You may lose money, right? Well, I'm here to tell you, if you're a risk-averse conservative engineer like me, that the best investment is always in yourself, in your growth, in your development, in your training. I've always seen it bear fruit in time. It's not a waste of time. You won't lose from that. It's going to reap fruit in its time. You might not see it right away, but over the lifespan of your 40-year career, it will flourish. Now, today I'm training others across the industry in the P&C engineering field. Many of my students are EITs. They need those real-life practical skills to do their new jobs, right? In this niche specialty field of electrical engineering power systems. But many of my students are also mid to senior level engineers who are already licensed PEs. And maybe they need to refresh on the fundamentals. Maybe they need to add to their skills some new concepts and skills that they haven't experienced yet. But also, as a licensed PE, you need professional development hours, PDHs. Some states call them CEUs, continuing education units, CPC, continuing professional competency, whatever that three-letter acronym is that your state or province uses. I'm going to fill you in on those requirements here momentarily and give you some words of advice on the PDH realm. But before we do, I want to encourage you with this thought. Don't just check the box on your PE PDHs to renew your PE license. Take advantage of continuing education opportunities for your career growth. Let the primary purpose of that time you're investing be to grow and develop yourself technically and professionally. Find continuing education courses which are relevant to your field of practice, that you can learn something, take it from that training, and immediately put it to use on the job on real life projects to solve real life problems, not just the bureaucracy rules of your state government regulating jurisdiction, right? That's not primarily the heart of continuing education. It's a lifelong love and passion for learning. Or pick training opportunities, not just for your current job duties, but that are going to pull you forward towards your future stretch professional goals, your dreams, your vision for down the road. For example, maybe you're currently working as a substation physical electrical design engineer, and you are intrigued and interested to learn more about protection and control. You could take PDHs that are going to steer your course a little more towards that desired direction to broaden your horizons and open doors for more variety of job assignments. Maybe you're primarily a field testing commissioning engineer today, and you want to transition your career path more into the office side of things with relay settings development and studies, and you're developing P&C design drawings. Take PDHs that are going to work you towards those future goals. And another thing I've observed in the industry, unfortunately, PEs are those that are more likely to get company sponsorship of training budget. Really the EITs are those that need the trainings the most to come up to speed to do the job duties that they're new to. So if you're not yet a PE, that's yet another motivation to pursue that licensure, because that'll help you justify the request to your company management for some training budget to get assigned, because it's state regulated and mandatory in most cases to get some professional development hours. Even if you're in a state that does not require PDHs, there are about 5 or so of those states. That's not a reason to not be growing and developing yourself. Even if you're an EIT and you're not yet a PE who needs PDHs, that's not a reason to not be growing and developing yourself. Don't wait until you have your PE license to take helpful trainings. Hopefully your company will still sponsor you for some training budget, especially if your courses you're taking are relevant to your job duties, right? It doesn't hurt to ask your manager. The worst they can say is no. You don't know if you don't try. But even if you can't, or if they won't sponsor you, if they don't have the budget available, invest in yourselves. Your career in the industry today will typically span at least 5 different companies, usually over the course of 40 plus years. You can't just sit back and wait for your employer or your manager to assign you some required trainings. You must take the initiative to steer your own career course. The onus of responsibility is on you. If your company does not agree to sponsor you, you're not a victim who can just blame others and dwell in a negative environment that doesn't support your growth. Take that initiative, take ownership, right, to develop yourself. And then if need be, go out and find a different employer who will sponsor you, who will support your continued growth and development thereafter. You know, about half of my students are company sponsored and the other half are self-investing for their own personal career development growth goals. And, I've tried hard to keep my pricing affordable levels so that people can invest in themselves, not just company sponsored training partners. There's a budget to budget investment, financial investment to the cost of training registrations, but there's also the required time investment. Even if you get company sponsorship, if it's not your personal funds, a lot of my students are too busy on the job in their 40+ hour a week job duties to have time for training. And to be honest, most of my students, company sponsored or not, are spending nights, weekends, and lunch breaks investing in their growth and development, their training goals. Just like you probably have to do if you're studying to take the FE or PE exam with Wasim. Trainings, likewise, another purpose of continued development is it strengthens your resume, your CV, and your LinkedIn profile. Makes it more attractive to hiring managers and recruiters. And taking trainings that are relevant to your next career move will help boost your confidence going into job interview opportunities, right? Whether it's a promotion, hopefully within your existing company, or it's an external jump if need be. I personally have been a hiring manager, and I've reviewed hundreds of resumes. I've had phone screen interviews with hundreds of candidates, and I can testify to you to what stands out on a solid resume or LinkedIn profile. If you're applying for a PNC engineer role and you've taken relevant training courses on various PNC topics, and you highlight that on your resume and on your LinkedIn profile, it's going to stand out from the stack. If a hiring manager has 25 resumes and is only going to choose 5 of them to invite in for a phone screen interview, you should be highlighting how you've been taking the initiative and even self-investing. It shows your passion and your love for learning and your interest in that career path that you're wanting to steer more into. So let's take a peek at what that might look like. I'm going to try a live demonstration here. I'm going to go to LinkedIn live demo, right? So I'm going to show you one of my students, actually a graduate from my training program a couple years back. He was a PNC engineer. And Paul, great job on your graduation. You notice he's highlighting some certificates on his LinkedIn feed. He's a member of the Power Transformations membership community on LinkedIn. But what I really want to highlight is the licenses and certifications section. And notice how he's put all of his Power Transformations course certificates on here. That shows his development over time. It shows the amount of time that he has invested into growth and learning, and especially highlight that graduation milestone when he completed the whole PNC Fundamentals Signature Training Program, all 12 courses, 75 hours. That's something worth celebrating. Whether that's Paul or any of my graduates, some of you are on the line today, I recognize your names. That's something worth highlighting on your resume, on your LinkedIn profile and feed, in your internal company training records, and kind of sharing about with your manager if they're not the one sponsoring you for it. That gives you some leverage when you sit down at the negotiating table in a performance review for your annual performance. You can say, hey, this is something I accomplished this year. I put my own personal time oftentimes into this to acquire these new skills. It's going to open doors for new opportunities and hopefully help you stand out to maybe get an above average on your performance review and above average compensation raises to more than pay back the investment that you made into yourself, into your training and development. So that's just an example of how it can catch the eye of a hiring manager, but also how you can use these training investments and certificates and really, most importantly, the real life skills that you've acquired through the trainings, okay? This isn't just checking a box. Your job performance is going to be so much better. You're going to be asking much more qualified questions to your supervisor because you have obtained these new skills and ideas. So, if you have two people that are fresh out of college and you give them the exact same project assignment, one who's given some solid training to go along with it, and one who's just thrown to the wolves on the job training, figure it out as you go. Which do you think is going to perform better on that assignment? By finding a qualified mentor, you can cut years off your development journey, and you can kind of accelerate your climb up that steep learning curve, whether you're in the P&C field or otherwise. And then lastly, job opportunity-wise, once you get that initial phone screen interview, in-person interview, you're likely going to get asked some questions, some technical questions. They might grill you on some topics to verify, do you understand the fundamentals that are required for that job? So you need to be taking trainings that can help you to ace that next interview opportunity. And I've had many of my students that are, maybe still in college and aspiring to get into their first full-time P&C job opportunity. And these trainings will help you do well in those interviews. I don't have time to go into all of my tips for professional development, but I want to point out to you a resource that's available on my website, pwr-trans.com. Don't worry, I got more coming for you. If you go to the store page and kind of scroll to the bottom, top 10 tips for young professional development. I shared that with the IEEE Young Professionals chapter in Charlotte, North Carolina. You can watch the recording of that, no cost, and find some more additional tips that you can apply to your career growth, whether you're a P&C engineer or otherwise. So let's circle back now to our PE licensure theme and focus back in on PDH requirements. Most states do require PDHs. Like I said, there's a few that do not. Again, if you're in a state that doesn't require it, don't let that stop you from taking trainings. You need to still be growing and developing yourself. But each state varies in their rules and regulations and laws. So this is, we can give you a general picture, but it is your responsibility to dig into your particular state. And so I'm going to actually use my home state as an example, South Carolina PE PDH rules. That's a good, put whatever two-letter state acronym or province acronym, and you kind of get a summary of references. AI these days is starting to give you some summaries that might be helpful, but I caution you, AI can be wrong. It's most reliable to go to the authoritative government source that is your regulating entity. So this is South Carolina. And you notice they have here a link to all of the rules about continuing professional competency, or PDHs. Likewise, there's an FAQ page, et cetera. Almost every state PE licensing board has something similar to this. I'm just using this as a case in point. But what you want to look out for in these rules as you read through them, besides just how many hours do you need and what is the time period that you need to complete those hours in, many states might allow carryover hours. So if you do more than is required in this period, you can kind of push forward some additional ones so they aren't lost. But things you want to look for: what does that state board consider as an authorized or an approved PDH? For example, requirements. Here's PDHs can be earned through all of these following opportunities, okay? You want to look for things like, does it have to be in person, face to face, or do they accept virtual? And they actually speak to that here in these rules. Does it have to be live, like today's session, or can it be pre-recorded on demand format? That's another thing to look for. And then do they require an examination following the session to prove that you successfully participated? Some states do require something along those lines. Pre-accreditation is another important concept, or pre-approval. Up here on the header, South Carolina Board does not pre-approve courses or sponsoring organizations. The government's not going to tell you whether Power Transformations is a qualified P&C engineering training provider or not. Is they trust you as a qualified PE to kind of make that assessment yourself. But some states do have the bureaucracy, about 5 states that require pre-approval. Power Transformations is pre-approved in 48 out of 50 US states and most Canadian provinces, minus New York and Maryland here in the States. Documentation requirements is another thing to look for. What do they want you to keep as records? There's a whole section here on record keeping. Usually that's something like a certificate of completion, et cetera. And here's where I'm going to show you a little screen share of NCEES website. This is a really helpful tool that I personally find helpful, my NCEES. Log into there. Here's the multi-state licensure module. If you want to establish an NCEES record that you can work towards multi-state or comity licensure besides your initial license. But then CPC tracking section is a really helpful way, especially if you're licensed in multiple states like I am. You can see kind of your renewal periods, how many hours you need to get in each state over that period. And it even tracks real time. How many hours are you up to against your requirement? My next renewal is coming up here. Looks like I'm good to go in Pennsylvania. Some states require ethics, others just technical or don't specify. It's really helpful place to upload a record of all of your recent training. So perhaps if you're a P&C engineer, you go to the Georgia Tech Protective Relaying Conference, you enter some information about your participation, you upload your certificate of completion. It's all a very nice centralized repository. Obviously, if you're a power transformation student, you should upload your certificates there as well for your courses you take through us. So highly recommend that tool to you as a licensed PE. All right, we are close to our time. I wanted to give you a brief intro of what is protection and control engineering for those that are not P&C engineers on the line. Instead, I think what I'm going to do in the interest of time, since I want to respect kind of our window here, when you go to my website, I showed you earlier the top 10 tips for young professional development. There's another free coaching session, Engineer Your P&C Career Path. And I go into all the details of, this is like an hour-long plus, talking about different opportunities within the P&C field, a variety of different types of work you can do, different leadership paths you can explore within your career path, different types of employers within that P&C engineers typically work for. I've worked for all of those different types. So definitely encourage you to check out that free coaching call, Engineer Your P&C Career Path, and learn more about the details of what the P&C field has to offer. It's a really exciting field to be in today. Lots of newer technologies being applied. For example, traveling wave technology versus phaser-based algorithms. Lots of new challenges to tackle with new generation renewables, distributed energy resources, especially lately, AI data centers and cryptocurrency mines, et cetera, all in the current events in the news nationwide. It never gets boring. There's always something new to learn, even after I've been in this field for 20 plus years. So if you sign up for this Engineer P&C Career Path, I have a free prize giveaway for one of you that signs up for this in the coming week. I'll announce it next week. I'll give away a 1 month courtesy membership, access to my whole PNC training library for 1 month. For anybody that signs up for this and checks it out, I'd love to give you a sneak peek of my trainings, and it would really be helpful to you. That's if you're currently working in PNC or if you're aspiring to get into the PNC world. I have a library. Back to that store, one final thought. There's 15 different courses in the library, over 100 hours of PDHs available if you're a licensed PE. This is back to school season for our kids and college students out there. Maybe us professionals should be inspired to value the lifelong love of learning. We should never stop growing. So in honor of our host, Wasim and StudyforFE, if you go to the monthly membership, which gets you access to the whole library, I encourage you to use this week only coupon code WASIM, WASIM, and that'll give you 20% off of the monthly membership in perpetuity, not just a first month discount. So if you are a PNC engineer and wanting to go deeper in your understanding, would love to have you as a student beyond this little workshop of coaching. So in fact, Wasim is one of my active members. So he wants to brush up on his PNC technical skills, get some PDHs for his own professional engineering licensure. So maybe you'll see him again on the inside.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Joshua, for naming that code with my name. I appreciate it. And yeah, Joshua's skill set is very specialized. He's very approachable. We have a bunch of common students as well, and I've only heard good things about his programs. It's very cutting edge. So how about we open the floor now for Q&A, Joshua? I've been taking some questions while you were presenting, and I appreciate you taking the questions while I was presenting. So there were a few recurring questions. Feel free to send your questions in chat, guys, and we will tackle them.
I'm going to scroll back through some of the earlier questions as well. Maybe there's some that we didn't have time to get to that might be good ones to address.
I'll take this one. Is the P exam closed book? Yes, it is. Identical to the FE Electrical and Computer exam, where you have a reference handbook that's provided. The difference is that in addition to the reference handbook for the P Power, you also have NEC, NFPA 70E, 497, 9930B, and NESC provided to you as part of the exam. So you don't have to bring in any codes and references.
One student asked a question, would you recommend getting licensed in a state that does not require PDHs? That sounds like a cop-out excuse to me to not put in the work. In fact, I would actually encourage you to get licensed in your home state foremost. That's a great place to start, but also having that mandatory PDHs can actually work out in your favor. It gives you justification to spend the time and the money, hopefully company sponsored, for your continuing education goals.
So Joshua, there's a question from one of my students. Is it best to transition to PNC from MEP after PE exam or now after passing the FE exam?
So transitioning to PNC after obtaining your PE?
Yeah, if I reframe it, this is a common question I also get. Wasim, should I switch jobs after getting my P license or should I switch jobs before getting my P license? My answer is wait for your P license and then switch jobs. How about you? And then add a layer of PNC move on top of that. What would be your recommendation?
I think I would probably recommend you decouple the PE licensure milestone from a shift in your career path, right? I think maybe if you're looking for a promotion opportunity, that's where the PE could be helpful to open a door. But if you want to be a PNC engineer or whatever field you want to go into, if you have an open door to step into that, go for your dreams. Don't wait till you pass a test to get started. As far as does the PE license, is that a mandatory credential to get into the PNC field? No. I think if you take some relevant trainings like mine and show those on your resume and show the hiring manager that you're seriously interested in getting into the PNC field, I think they'll let you into a more entry-level opportunity without your PE license, especially if you tell them, hey, my goal and my desire is to study and prepare and obtain my PE license. especially if you tell them my time frame. Here's my path. I plan to study for the PE and hopefully pass it in this such and such a date in the future. They'll oftentimes respect that your intentions and not just maybe they'll say, hey, we'll bring you in at this level, and once you get that PE, we can help you at your next performance review to get to that next career ladder. Did that
I'll
answer the
take,
question?
yeah, very nicely. I'll take these two questions back to back. Does the master's degree count towards 4 years of EIT requirement? So most of the states do give you credit for 1 year if you completed your graduate degree towards your experience, but it varies from state to state. As far as EIT requirement is concerned, in order to get the EIT certification, you pass the FE exam and get the credential evaluated. So experience is not a requirement for the EIT certification, it's a requirement for the P license. Second question, can I take FE exam without EIT certification? Yes, FE comes first, EIT comes after. And EIT certification is optional. I have seen folks and myself as well. I didn't go for the EIT certification. I took my FE exam. Right after that, I passed my P exam and just went for the P license. If there is going to be a significant break between your FE exam and the P exam, then getting the EIT certification in the interim to get registered is a good idea.
I'll take a question here from Josue, one of those common students of both of us. Why is it difficult to find P&C engineers? I've heard of companies taking a couple of years to find someone compared to other industries. That's a really good question. Why is it difficult? But you're onto something there that there is seeming supply and demand, a shortage, especially of qualified P&C engineers. I think there's an overabundance almost lately of junior level people with limited experience that are just kind of getting their feet wet in P&C, but that 5, 10, 20-year senior principal engineer level, there's fewer and fewer of them. A lot of baby boomer retirees going out, a lot of junior, millennial, even Gen Z these days, right? Coming into the industry. And so there's this gap that we need help filling. And that's one of my goals from this training program is to help be that knowledge transfer to that up and coming generation. So I think that's part of why it's difficult, because companies have not invested in training and development and succession planning like they should have.
Yeah, and it takes time to pick up skills in PNC as well. And that also requires you being a little bit lucky that the projects that you get assigned, so it's a multi-factor thing, right? I'll just briefly elaborate on that. A, you get to work on high quality projects which are stretch, challenging, have a little bit of new technology, some issues that you have to creatively tackle. B, ideally, mentors who take you under their wings and basically help you learn it, because it's more of a skill that is learned on the job. When you combine these two with the fact that a lot of folks are retiring with that skill set, right? That is what makes it, in my opinion, and based on my observation, in addition to what Joshua explained already, even much more difficult for folks to pick the skills up in the industry and carry them forward. So that's why there's a high premium. And combine that with the PE license. On top of that, I've seen some of my students in the past who've had this kind of a skill set, and they've actually even gone ahead and become independent contractors. And they basically work for utilities and whatnot as independent contractors. And that's the entrepreneurial angle that one can take. So it's applicable across all different industries. I'll take this question from Jessica. What if I have experience in different field of engineering? Would it still count towards experience towards PE? So the experience requirement, this is very interesting. I am noticing that a lot of people are actually jumping ahead to the experience requirement and thinking that, whether they will ever qualify for the PE license. I'll answer your question directly, but before that, I'd like to just make this recommendation. If you are serious about getting the PE license, your starting point, guys, is the FE exam. Don't overthink it. Get it done. Have the exam taken care of, and ideally jump into the P power exam preparation. These two exams are the major roadblocks towards licensure. As far as experience is concerned, it comes down to your references. It comes down to how you present yourself, your supplementary experience record form, It is also partially a function of who is looking at your application and which state board you are applying. None of those factors are in your control. The factors that are in your control are meeting the exam requirements and putting your best foot forward as far as your experiences concerned. 1 year of experience repeated 10 times over 10 years is still considered 1 year of experience until and unless you are able to persuade your application evaluator that I've been progressively taking more responsible roles, right? This is where your in-depth understanding of experience and your writing skills, your presentation skills come into play, backed up by proper references. So don't worry too much about experience. I think there about a third of these questions, Joshua, I'm noticing are directly, indirectly related to experience. Folks are jumping right into that 4-year experience requirement without really recognizing, that the more difficult aspects of the licensure process are these two exams.
I'll take a couple questions here from Michael Go. What are the pros and cons of working for a utility versus an engineering consulting firm for a career that's focused in P&C? Michael, I'm not going to reiterate myself. I encourage you to sign up for Engineer Your P&C Career Path, free coaching. I go into that very explicit question. Just want to ask, do you have a book on P&C coming up anytime soon? Wasim has a great book, Study for FE. You definitely recommend that if you're in the FE prep. I do not have a book, although I do write on LinkedIn posts, and I prefer the more interactive video training format over the written textbook methodology. There's a good number of protection and control textbooks out there. In fact, I recommend a lot of them to my students as helpful references. But I think the Gen Z younger generation actually prefers the interactive video training format over the written textbook format oftentimes. Wasim can offer you both. No, I don't have plans to author a book anytime soon.
I'll take another question related to experience requirement. Does the P qualification count experience gain before earning EIT certification, or is it only counted after earning EIT certification? This question, Sudeep, came up earlier as well. The only state which has a little bit of a unique rule around it is Pennsylvania, if I'm not mistaken. They start counting the clock. They start the clock after you get your EIT certification. Even if you have 10 years of experience, and which is very unique scenario, apparently they don't give you credit for the experience you had before you get your EIT certification. I'm not sure exactly if that rule is still valid, but as far as I know, they're the only exception. Pretty much everybody else counts your experience before you get the EIT certificate, before you pass the FE exam. Basically, any experience gained after your undergraduate engineering degree counts towards your EIT certification and the P licensure.
Another question from Josue. What have you done to stay in the cutting edge? Are there any memberships you belong to? I think the best way to stay in the cutting edge is to be actively working on projects when possible. I think I know for myself, my business is primarily a training, mentoring, coaching focus, but I like to actually stay engaged in some real life consulting projects, give me inspiration for new up and coming training topics. So as far as what memberships, there's quite a few options out there besides power transformations. That's a great starting point if you're a P&C engineer. Obviously, IEEE is a common one in our industry for electrical engineers. In our case, IEEE Power and Energy Society. I've been a member of that since my college, almost 20 years now. There are societies or committees within there like Power Systems Relay and Control Committee, where you can be engaged in developing technical standards for the industry. That's another opportunity for you. So there's lots of ways you can continue your development.
I'll take this question from a current student of mine, Jonathan Hass, who's going through the FE electrical program. Question is, what would be your recommendation for how we should study after finishing all of your on-demand sections and your practice problem books, the practice problem book number 1 you offer? I know there is a simulated practice exam at the end. So Jonathan, once you've completed the entire coursework, remember in the program I talk about 2 rounds of review. First round is covering entire ground when it comes to the FE electrical and computer exam specification, which entails 17 sections from mathematics all the way to software, which you have completed, which is 80% of the work, to be honest. So round 2 is knowledge consolidation. So in the spreadsheet that I offer you in the program as soon as you sign up, hopefully you've been tracking your strengths and weaknesses along the way. Now is the time to pull up that spreadsheet, look at the difficult or the medium level difficulty topics, and hammer those one more time. I don't remember if you enrolled in my just the on-demand or the on-demand plus live training bundle. If you have access to the live training bundle as well, if you've gone through the summer live training, make use of the homework assignments that I gave. If not, then in the on-demand, redo all the mini exams. And the computer simulator practice exam at the end of the on-demand is going to serve as a diagnostics in combination with the NCA sample exam. So the fine tuning of your preparation in the lead up to your exam is what can make a huge difference in the outcome. And at that point in time, you know what you don't know. So just fill in those gaps and be very honest and transparent. I'm sure you are being very honest and transparent to yourself, but sometimes students kind of ignore the stuff that is weak and they just keep on hammering their strengths. The FE exam, the thing that sinks the boat is when you do selective studying, right? Even if there are sections that you are not comfortable with, control systems, signal processing, linear systems, these are the handful of sections that students routinely feel frustrated about, or computer system, software engineering, and so on. We still got to face up. We still have to have at least fundamental level of understanding so that if a level one, level two question is asked, you can convert that into a point. So knowledge consolidation, fine tuning of your exam preparation is where you should be spending your time.
I'll take a question from Chalmers Gaither. What's the best way to get back into the field after being out for 2 years? There's a few details I'd have to hear a little more from you. You know, how many years experience did you have before the 2 year break? But in general, if you've got some foundation before your break, I think, especially in electrical engineering, power field these days, there's such a demand. I would think that people would welcome you back into the industry if you're interested. But specifically, if you're thinking of getting back into, say, P&C engineering field, brushing up on some technical trainings, strengthening your resume, boosting your confidence going into interviews, that would be a recommended path as you're approaching this re-entry into the workforce. Do you have to still work under a PE license to gain the license, or just experience? This is a question from Roshandra. I'll take a stab at that. I think the answer is it depends on your state government rules, if I'm not mistaken. Some states are very stringent that your 4 years of experience must exclusively be underneath a licensed PE. And I think some of them are not quite as stringent on that. They are looking for you to have references from all of your job experiences, and ideally some of those references are from licensed PEs, but not necessarily all 4 years under a PE. Is that correct, Wasim, from your understanding?
Yeah, so the experience requirements and how they evaluate kind of varies from a state to state.
Yeah.
It may even vary from the evaluator to evaluator. It's kind of subjective because they look at it case by case basis. My general recommendation, and again, a third of these questions are related to the experience, so I'm just gonna, give my 2 cents on it. If you've been doing meaningful engineering work under a PE or without a PE. And there's a question from Chandana. She has experience, 2 years of experience um, uh, in India, right? About a third of my students are internationally trained. I have not had even a single case, and I've helped hundreds of students over the last several years where somebody has passed their FE exam, somebody's passed their PE exam, and they've been denied license. Not even a single scenario. Okay. The point is, and as I mentioned in the outset, in the US, there is a recognition that there is talent coming into the US from all the four corners of the world. For every single profession, not only engineering, medicine, legal, accounting, nursing, about a significant percentage of professionals working in these professions are not locally trained, they don't have local credentials, or they didn't go to schools in the US. So, pretty much every profession, and I'll speak for engineering, they have pathways. They're never going to be like, oh, you basically are not going to be able to get the license because you don't have this. There will be options that will be provided to you, right? If your degree doesn't match up, they'll give you a handful of short courses that you can take and pass those exams. As far as experience is concerned, they'll be like, okay, good job with the FE exam, P exam, meeting the requirements. Just accumulate a couple of more years of experience and then submit your application again. Even that scenario I have not encountered. because if you have meaningful experience and if you're working, right, or even if you're looking for the first role, the FEIT certification is going to allow you to get that. So my general messaging is that please do not overthink the experience requirement. It's not going to be a showstopper. They may ask you more questions. Once you even have met the bare minimum threshold within of 4 years, chances are that without any type of delay, you will have a very good shot at getting the license. Okay. Worst case scenario, you may have to accumulate one more year of experience, but I've never encountered a situation where they're like, oh, we're never going to give you a license because of this or that. There are always options. Make sense?
I'll take a question from EHOB, and this may apply to other listeners as well. Asking about a call to discuss different courses and help decide. My recommended approach to you, EHOB and others, is starting point, reach out to me with a LinkedIn connection request if we're not already connected. Shoot me a direct message on LinkedIn is probably the best way to interact. You can share a little bit about a brief introduction of your path where you're at and some of your goals, and I can help you and maybe ask a few follow-up questions in a chat and help you decide which course or courses would be the best, most helpful starting point for you. Reach out to me and if that's your situation.
There is a question from a student of mine regarding burnout. I like to address this. I think I was a little bit oblivious, I'll be honest, to this regarding the burnout. I think it is very real. I myself experience burnout at the end of every single live training session. Okay, and I think this is very important. How do you prevent burnout and fatigue? I think it really varies from an individual to individual. The most important thing, based on my personal observation experience, is to first recognize when you're getting burned out. And because that will allow you to sort of take a little bit of a break in between. Okay, maybe go into a lower gear with your preparation, maybe even push the exam out, right? Especially for folks who've been thinking about this for several years. If you've been 10 years out of school and now you're preparing for FE, but you're preparing as if, or the PE exam, as if, all hell is going to break loose if you don't pass it in 2 months, I think that is irrational, because up until 10 years ago, you were not really even thinking about it. All of a sudden was a rush. There could be certain deadlines and whatnot, but I think we have to look at it a little bit more rationally. So use extended exam preparation timeline if that is feasible. Take a little bit of a break in between. Okay, don't go off completely in terms of your preparation. Don't pull the plug on it completely, but self-care is very important, and especially if you are going at FE and PE back to back. So sleep, a little bit of a downtime, physical exercise, nutrition, all of the good stuff. I'm not an expert in that field, but I've realized over time and having several interviews conducted with my students, that everybody gets hit with burnout, especially at the end of the P power exam preparation. That is very, very common. It's such an open-ended and challenging exam that it can be overwhelming. Okay.
I've got a question I'll take here from Jesus. What trainings would you offer or recommend for us to get better at general SEL knowledge? Excellent question, Jesus. I just so happen to be a former SEL employee for about 7 years. I've taken many of their training courses. It's great stuff. But I want to point you to realization that my trainings, when you look through my curriculum, almost always include SEL relay models for real life case study demonstrations. So I teach real life or principles and fundamentals of these various protection schemes, and I follow it up with a case study demonstration using a variety of SEL relay models, since I'm most intimately familiar with them. So I'd love to have you a student if you're looking to learn more about SEL relays in particular.
I'll take this question from Iqbal. When it comes to pass fail for FE, does it count overall or evaluated by section average? It's cumulative. So your overall performance, you can potentially have an outright zero in one of the section and you can be acing everything else and your overall average will still be decent. The interesting thing is that you don't get to see your performance on the FE and the PE exam. If you pass, you get to see that diagnostic, that dreadful diagnostic, only if you fail, and you don't want to see it.
I think take this maybe as a good last question for me. Josue is asking another follow-up question. What's encouraged both of you to stay in your respective fields instead of switching to other industries for a promotion or raise, given that younger engineers tend to change jobs every few years. I talk about this in some of my coachings about there's a balance between breadth and depth. In my opinion, if you're just camping out every few years in different areas, you're never really growing the depth. And in order to become a subject matter expert in a certain area, to be really like a principal level practitioner of that specialty niche, you really need to grow depth. And so for me, I did actually try some other areas. I did do some jumps and explore some breadths, but ultimately I chose to come back into PNC and grow depth and to the principal level. And that's been very fulfilling for me. And so hopefully that answers your question, Josue.
I'll give my 2 cents on that, Joshua. I think my experience is slightly different from yours. I started out as a journalist, a generalist, not a JOUR. Okay. So rather than a specialist, I worked the first 4 or 5 years of my career as a junior intermediate engineer in MEP environment, getting exposed to a wide range of different types of projects, commercial, industrial, mining metals, nuclear, and so on. What that allowed me was to have that breadth that you were mentioning, right? Having a broad understanding, and that's hopefully what's reflected in my PE Power programs as well. I can sort of intelligently talk about a lot of different topics because of the exposure that I gained. And then once you get a sense of, doing the commissioning, startup, design, layouts, field support, and all the whole 9 yards, doing protection and device coordination, ETAP studies, SKM studies, load flow, short circuit. So you get to develop a sense of a little bit about everything, right? But it's very important at that point to recognize you're not an expert. I cannot pretend to be Joshua, right, in terms of my depth of understanding in PNC, right? But I have a very broad understanding of, whole cycle of a multi-billion-dollar project as to how different disciplines come into play, what is the flow of information, and what are the critical points in both project management and electrical engineering. So it also is a function of for your personality, in the sense that if you're the type of an engineer who likes to carve out a domain for yourself and really master it, and are not necessarily as much interested in the big picture view of things, what's happening in procurement, what's happening in project management, what is happening in scheduling, what is happening with the vendors, right? Then that's fine. You can stay focused in one area. So it's also a little bit of a factor of how you see yourself getting involved in different areas. Okay. So Joshua, I think it's time. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna do a very quick screen share over here, guys. Thanks a lot for attending. So this is my shop. Okay. StudyforFE.com. I call it one-stop shop for FE electrical and PE power exam prep. You'll find details about FE electrical, PE power, pricing options for FE electrical, the schedule and everything. 6-month bundle is what I basically mentioned earlier. The live training is starting soon. And then when you click on the P Power course, you're going to find all the details for the P Power program and so on. And this is Joshua's website. I dropped the link a couple of times already, pwr-trans.com. And this is Joshua's store. He mentioned about the special discount that he set up for all of you. So feel free to check these out. I also shared our LinkedIn URLs, both mine and Joshua's, in the chat. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And we will, in some way, shape, or form, we'll have to figure out the logistics, share the recording, either completed or edited, or in the form of a LinkedIn post or a YouTube link or a Zoom link. Please give us a few days to work this out, and and stay in touch with us. Any last comments, Joshua?
And hopefully we'll also be able to send you out, along with that recording link, maybe some of these links to these special offers or discounts, so you can take advantage of that this week ahead. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. Excited to see your enthusiasm for your continued professional development and growth, whether it's the PE phase or beyond. So I look forward to seeing many of you, hopefully as students in my PNC training program, if you're a PNC engineer out there.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good rest of the week. Thank you. Bye.
Take care.